Hey, it's Norm from Tesla.com. I'm here at CES 2014. Really fortunate to be able to speak here with Greg Coomer. You work at Valve as a product designer, and you've been working for the past year on the Steam controller, which we've seen here for the first time. So Greg, tell us, how did the Steam controller idea come about, and what were the goals at Valve in designing it?
Well, we set out to really do three things. The controller was one part of that mission. It was about input on the sofa and in the living room. A lot of people want to be able to play Steam games and port that experience to the living room, but not lug in a giant keyboard and mouse with them to try to use them on sofa cushions. So we started with an inventory of really what was necessary. We needed to help people play games that weren't designed for controllers and that were designed for a mouse and keyboard, but accomplish it with a handheld device.
So you're saying fast first-person shooters, real-time strategy games. So what's in that inventory? What were those things that this controller had to accomplish?
The inventory, we use that word to describe all the keys on a PC keyboard and the full kind of analog high-resolution input that comes from a device like a mouse. So if we took both of those things and put them in your hands, then we would have accomplished accommodating the full inventory of input that's necessary for the whole Steam catalog.
There are a lot of buttons on the Steam controller, and gripping it for the first time today, it feels different than you would grip, for example, an Xbox or a PlayStation controller.
Yeah.
So how is it different in your words, in your design sense?
Well, it's interesting when you hold the controller to realize that it is necessary to have it be a different shape, because the tips of your thumbs need to make contact in just the right way with the trackpads. So for example, when we first started building the controller, we made the trackpads flat, and we did not really change the shape of the controller to accommodate that style of input. And the result was that your thumb would lay down flat on the controller, and it wasn't very precise kind of input. When we angled the trackpad back and also tilted it out towards your hand, that was the key to getting the precision of input from the tips of your thumbs and the natural range of motion, so that you're not fatigued when you're playing for hours, say. So it's an outgrowth, it's an ergonomic set of decisions.
Range of motion being very important, because it's not just the thumbstick with a relatively limited range of motion.
Right. It is a larger range of motion, but it's a natural, I mean, I'm not sure what the physical size of the discs are for the trackpad, but they're about what we found through testing to be a comfortable range to accommodate, players.
Now there's also haptic feedback on these touchpads, and can you talk a little about the design of that, and just how much feedback is a player supposed to get when playing a game?
So it's actually a critical component. That when you're touching the device, the kinds of things that happen when you touch a trackball or a thumbstick or even a mouse are really absent when you use a trackpad without haptic feedback. So on your laptop, for example, it's not really suitable for gaming, because you can't tell where you're hitting edges or where you're crossing boundaries of input, say if you're doing D-pad style input. So there are a number of ways that we use haptic feedback as a channel of information back to the player that are critical to the experience.
And right now it's motors, two motors underneath these trackpads bouncing up?
It's a different technology. Actually, the technical term is linear resonant actuator.
Okay.
And what that really is just a fancy name for a weight at the end of an electromagnet that moves in a linear fashion rather than a spinning motor. And that allows for a much higher precision kind of feedback, as opposed to spinning up a motor that goes in a circular pattern.
So it's kind of pulsing against the bottom of the trackpad to let your fingers know, but the goal is to let your fingers know where it is relative to the circle of the trackpad, and not necessarily to provide resistance?
No, it's not to provide resistance, it's to provide information. So you cross a boundary sometimes between the center of the pad and the outer ring. Sometimes you cross boundaries that are 8-way divisions within the track, like slices of pizza, where you're crossing those boundaries, and the haptic feedback will tell you. It also is good for things like emulating the behavior of a trackball. So if you spin, quote unquote, the trackball that's being emulated inside the software, the firmware of the device, there's haptic feedback that makes it feel like there's a real ball spinning under your thumb. And that's also really useful, and you can feel when it's spinning fast and when it's spinning slow, and the momentum that that continues after you've let go, things like that.
So where is the controller now relative to where you guys want it to be when you eventually release it?
It's quite close. So we're actually in the final phases for the high volume production run that we've got to get ready for later this year. We're making the final design changes based on beta feedback that we're learning from the 300 people who have received prototype controllers so far.
So the form is close, but you'll have the touchpad in the middle and also be wireless compared to these prototypes you have here.
Yeah, that's the current plan.
Thank you so much, Greg, for talking with us and giving us a little insight onto the design of the Steam gamepad. We'll be sitting down and trying it for ourselves in just a moment. Thanks so much. All right, well,
yeah,
I just talked to Greg from Valve, and now we finally have some quality time.
Unsupervised
with the Steam controller prototype.
Yes.
The savior for PC gaming.
I don't think PC gaming needs a savior.
Well,
just be clear.
Just then.
Did he say savior?
Well, he's going to bring it back to its glory.
This is PC Jesus. We've been playing Portal 1.
Portal 1
this
or
is
2?
Portal 1.
Portal 1, Valve-made game with the Steam controller. And
traditionally kind of bad gamepad controls, though.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting experience. So
what you're going to notice right away, it looks like a controller, but there's no thumbsticks. Whereas the Xbox controller has your thumbsticks here, and PlayStation has them here, the little ball sack of controls, thumbsticks.
Yes, exactly.
You have two big pads here, and these are touch pads.
They look like speakers.
Yeah, they do, except you're not going to hear anything from them.
They don't make
sound. You have a lot of buttons. These 4 buttons here.
I think some of that's temporary based on, because this is eventually going to be a touch screen or
right in the middle
like
will be a touch screen right here. And then you have 2 trigger buttons. Thank goodness they are concave.
Yes. And the bottom one's, well, actually it doesn't feel like it's analog. Maybe a little bit.
A little bit. It's very little travel.
Yeah.
Relative
to short throw.
Very short throw compared to the PlayStation. Actually, it's a little bit throw and then click.
Yeah, there's a detente at the end.
Yep.
And then there's these 2 paddle switches under here. And they're on Portal, they're bound to crouch and jump, I think. I think the idea is just that you have a couple of more controls than the traditional, because they are taking away the face buttons. There's no X, Y, A, B here as there would be on an Xbox controller.
That's going to be here. They want to pack as many controls, as many keyboard analogs and mouse analogs into this form factor as they could. And it's all programmable.
And the thing that you can do, the thing that you said is, you could actually bind X, Y, A, B type controls to click down on the top edge, click down on the right edge, click down on the left edge, and there's a center click as well.
So the most interesting thing is the way you hold it. The way you hold a normal Xbox controller is like that.
Yeah, a kind of gentle recline.
You recline back, you grip the bottom, and you move your thumbs like that. With this controller, you're actually holding it a little more top heavy. And that's because they want your thumb to have this full range of motion.
Yeah, I found that with an Xbox controller, I typically use kind of the fat pad of my thumb.
Right.
With this, I was using more of the tip.
You definitely want to use the tip of your thumb.
Just the tip, Norm.
Just the tip of both thumbs, and there's feedback. So it's actually, you can actually feel something pulsing underneath your thumb as you move across the touchpad. It's very subtle.
It reminds me of the early iPods. Not the first generation that was mechanical, but the first one that used the touch style.
Scroll wheel.
It had an onboard speaker that clicked. It's the same level of feedback, maybe a little bit stronger than that, but not. It isn't something that jumps out at you.
And it's something where you can actually, because they said it's a linear actuator. It punches up. It pokes. So you can actually, if you rest a thumb on it, you can hear the clicks.
You feel the click through the rest of your hand.
Yep.
The other thing I noticed is that at least in this game, there's some inertia on the control. So if you spin your thumb on that, it keeps spinning.
So I said it was programmable before, and we can show that if we press this, it's like basically a space button on the screen. It will give you the option on screen to change your controls. Basically, it brings up your menu. You can save all your bindings. You can share your bindings.
I think you can share with friends or with the internet at large.
Yep.
I feel like this is something that worries me. I want default bindings that I just plug it in and work like an Xbox controller.
There's definitely a learning curve. So I think different people are going to want to have different bindings, because a lot of people may not want to use secondary triggers or get more comfortable with these paddles. Something else I noticed is that it's really light. And that's a lot, maybe because it's not final hardware. This is wired. The final version will be wireless.
No screen.
There's no screen, no battery on the inside. But they say this is near final design.
So the thing that struck me immediately is that I've used a lot of non-mouse and keyboard gamepad controllers over the years, most of the time you always use them, you think that, oh, there's a learning curve, I need to kind of spend some time with this. This is no different than that. I've used this for 5 or 10 minutes. Definitely need to spend a lot more time with it before I can decide how I feel. My initial impressions aren't particularly good.
It's not pick up and play.
It is not. It is pick up and play, but it's not pick up and play well. I spent 5 or 6 minutes trying to get over what would have been a very simple jumping puzzle. That would take 2 seconds with a mouse, maybe even less time with a keyboard. I do love the feedback that you get from the linear actuator motors, because it lets you know where you are in relation to the edge of the pad. Both that and the circles on the pad.
Right, there are 2 circles, a smaller circle and a wider circle.
Yeah, exactly. And you like the feedback, but more importantly, the feedback gets more intense the further you get out. So the pulsing's relatively slow in the middle, out toward the edge it's fast. I did notice that on the movement stick, you have to leave your thumb on the stick all the time, because if you lift it up and put it back down, then you're going to jump forward or jump back or jump to the side.
Yep.
But I do like that you have both analog control of movement, so you can walk slowly or walk quickly, and analog control of looking. That's better. The aiming seems better than a gamepad.
And sensitivity,
the movement's twitchy.
Momentum, all of that is configurable as well in Steam.
And my hunch is that they probably have different modes for these sticks. I still think that the thing that a bunch of the game developers said when they did the first round is true. I don't think that if you have a game that's tweaked for a gamepad already, you're going to play this. I also thought it was really interesting that they don't have anything like Civilization 5. They don't have any StarCraft, any kind of traditional mouse-only games available to demo here. It's all shooters as far as I can see.
So this likely will come out later this year. They haven't announced any pricing or date.
No pricing or date was explicitly.
And they did say that Valve would be selling just the controller to anyone who wants to use it on PC.
And of course you can download SteamOS as well. Is the version with the touchscreen going to ship later this year?
That's the only version that will ship.
Okay, this is just prototypes for developers and stuff like that. Okay, so that is the Steam controller. For Tested, I'm Will.
And I'm Norm.
We'll see you guys later with more CES all week.
PC Jesus.